Hey there, welcome back to another journey through forgotten time. And tonight, we're traveling to a place they never taught you about in school. Before Europeans ever set foot on this continent, before the Aztecs built Tenochtitlan, there was a city, not a village, not a settlement, a sprawling metropolis of 20,000 souls, rising from the Mississippi floodplains like something from another world entirely. You're about to become one of them. You'll walk streets that stretched for miles. You'll feel the earth shake beneath ceremonial mounds taller than anything you can imagine. You'll taste the ash in the air when everything begins to crumble. But here's the thing that keeps historians awake at night. By HNC by CE, it was gone. Completely abandoned. The greatest city north of Mexico vanished without a clear explanation. No European disease, no Spanish conquest, just empty. So tonight, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. Grab your favorite blanket, dim those lights, and settle in, because you're about to experience something extraordinary, and you're about to live in Cahokia. And you're about to watch it die. You wake before dawn in a small timber house pressed against a dozen others just like it. The year is Ichenling Worsher CE, and you are 12 summers old, the youngest son of a farmer who owes labor debt to the Sky Clan. Your name is Black Heron, though most people just call you boy or fetch this or nothing at all. The smell hits you first. 20,000 people living in 6 square miles produces a particular perfume: wood smoke, human waste, roasting maize, and the thick Mississippi mud that never quite dries between your toes. You can hear the city waking up around you. Someone's grinding corn 2 houses over. A baby wails. Dogs bark at absolutely nothing, which they'll continue doing until someone kicks them. Your father is already gone. He left hours ago to work on Monk's Mound, the massive earthen pyramid that dominates the city center. Everyone owes labor to the mounds. It's how you prove you belong here. It's how you hear that you're not just some outlander who wandered in from the woods. Your mother hands you a small bowl of hominy without looking at you. Her hands are cracked and bleeding from weaving reed mats 16 hours a day. She doesn't speak much anymore. Neither do you. Outside, the sky is turning that particular shade of gray that promises rain. You need to reach the workshop district before the morning bell, or the overseer will dock your family's grain ration. Again, you step into the street. Immediately, you're swimming through humanity. The plaza between residential zones is already packed with people. Merchants from the surrounding farmsteads have brought river fish, rabbits, medicinal herbs, freshwater pearls, and sheets of beaten copper. Everyone's shouting. The trade language here is a mix of Siwan, Algonquian, and a dozen other tongues you barely understand. You duck between 2 large men arguing over the price of a beaver pelt. One of them has filed his teeth to points. A warrior mark from the Northern Territories. You've learned not to make eye contact with warriors. They're always looking for an excuse. The workshop district sits on the western edge of the Grand Plaza, a massive open space that could hold 1,000 people during ceremonies. Today, it only holds about 300, most of them laborers like you, heading to their assigned tasks. The great sun, the divine ruler of Cahokia, demands the mounds grow larger every year. This requires an endless supply of dirt, carried in baskets, 1 load at a time. Your job is different, though. You're assigned to the flint-knapping workshop, where artisans create the tools that make everything else possible. It's tedious work, but at least you're indoors when it rains. As you approach the workshop, you see your supervisor, a man called Stone Hand. He's 40, which makes him ancient. His fingers are masses of scar tissue from decades of working stone. Stone Hand doesn't greet you. He just jerks his head toward the back corner where the raw flint nodules are stored. You know the drill, sort them by size, discard the ones with too many fractures, and bring the good ones to the master knappers. The workshop is a long rectangular building with a thatched roof and walls made of wattle and dub. Inside, it's darker and cooler than outside. About 20 people work here, ranging from apprentices like you to master craftsmen who can turn a chunk of stone into a blade so sharp it can split a hair. You settle onto a woven mat and begin sorting. The work is mind-numbing. Pick up a stone, examine it. Good pile or discard pile. Repeat. The only sounds are the tap, tap, tap of hammerstone on flint and the occasional curse when someone ruins a piece they've spent hours on. Around midday, something unusual happens. The tapping stops. Everyone looks up. You hear it before you see it, drumming from the direction of Monk's Mound. Not ceremonial drumming. This is urgent military. Stonehand stands and walks to the doorway. You and the others follow. Outside, people are streaming toward the Grand Plaza. Something's happening. Something big. Stay here, Stonehand orders. Nobody listens. You all move toward the plaza, curiosity overwhelming caution. That's when you see them, warriors, at least 200 of them, marching in formation through the western gate. They're not from Cahokia. That much is obvious from their appearance. These men wear their hair in elaborate topknots decorated with feathers. Their faces are painted black and red. They carried bundles of weapons, bows, war clubs studded with sharpened stone, and large shields made from buffalo hide. The crowd parts for them. You press yourself against the wall of a storage building, making yourself as small as possible. Your heart hammers in your chest. You've heard stories about warriors from other cities, about what happens when diplomacy fails. But these warriors aren't attacking. They're here for the games. Every 4 years, the greatest cities of the Mississippi Valley send their best athletes to Cahokia for the chunky tournaments. You'd forgotten. Your father mentioned it weeks ago. But you've been too exhausted to pay attention to anything beyond your daily tasks. Chunky. The game that obsesses every man in every city from here to the Gulf. You throw a stone disc, then throw spears at where you think it will stop rolling. Fortunes change hands on these games. Men have lost everything, wives, children, their own freedom, betting on Chunky. The warriors march toward the great Chunky court near Monk's Mound. Behind them come delegations from other cities, traders, priests, nobles, all here to watch and wager. You follow the crowd to the Chunky court, though you know you'll never get close enough to actually see anything. The court is a smooth, prepared field, stretching nearly 200 paces long and 40 wide. The ground has been packed and smoothed over years, until it's almost as hard as stone. Wooden poles mark the boundaries, each topped with carved symbols representing different cities. The elite of Cahokia are already seated on raised platforms on either side of the court. You can see the great sun himself, though from this distance he's just a figure in elaborate regalia, surrounded by wives and attendants. Even from here, you can see the sunlight glinting off the copper ornaments that cover his body. You find a spot on a small rise where you can sort of see between taller spectators. The games begin with ceremony, prayers to the morning star, tobacco offerings, speeches from visiting chiefs that go on so long people start sitting down. Then the first game begins. 2 champions step onto the court, one from Cahokia, one from a northern city called Astalan. The Cahokia champion is a man called Red Bird. Everyone knows him. He's won 5 consecutive tournaments. His arms are scarred from training accidents. He never smiles. The stone disc is thrown. It rolls, wobbling slightly, for what feels like forever. Both men sprint after it, spears raised. Red Bird's spear leaves his hand in a motion so smooth you barely register it. A weapon flies in a perfect arc. The stone disc wobbles, begins to slow, tips slightly, and then, impossibly, Redbird's spear slams into the ground, exactly 3-finger widths from where the disc finally stops. The crowd erupts. The challenger from Astalon hasn't even thrown his spear yet. He does now, but it's too late and too far off. The game is over before it began. Redbird raises one hand in acknowledgement, face expressionless, then walks off the court. He's done this so many times it bores him. You watch 7 more games. Cahokia wins 5. The betting is furious. Men are shouting at bookmakers, waving shell beads and copper pieces. You see one man hand over his copper ear spools. Worth maybe 3 months of a craftsman's labor. After a bad bet, he walks away with his head down, ears bleeding slightly from the removal. The sun is setting when Stone Hand finds you in the crowd. He doesn't yell, which somehow makes it worse. He just looks at you with that tired disappointment that says you've confirmed everything he already thought about you. You workshopped on. Don't make me come find you again. You nod and slip away through the dispersing crowd. The city at dusk is different from morning. The cooking fires are lit. People are tired, moving slower. You can hear singing from one of the residential compounds. Someone's probably celebrating a good bet on the games. Your mother has made beancakes tonight. A luxury that means your father must have earned extra rations somehow. The 3 of you eat in silence. Your father's hands are shaking from exhaustion. He's been hauling baskets of earth up Monk's Mound for 12 hours straight. The mound is already 28 paces tall, and the priests say it needs to be 35. Every pace of height requires thousands of basket loads of dirt. They found a body today, your father says suddenly, breaking the silence. His voice is flat. In the old section of the mound, when they were digging to add the western terrace, your mother stops eating. One of the old ones? No, recent, maybe a month in the ground. Someone important. They buried him with shell beads and a copper plate. The priests are saying it's a bad sign. Disrupting a new burial like that, you know what this means. When something goes wrong with the mounds, a collapse, a discovery like this, someone has to appease the spirits. Usually, that someone is a slave or a prisoner taken in war. You've never actually seen a sacrifice, but you've heard the stories. Everyone has. Yet your father finishes his bean cake and immediately lies down on his sleeping mat. Within moments, he's snoring. Your mother begins cleaning the bowls with sand and a scrap of leather. You want to ask her questions about the body, about sacrifices, about what happens when the spirits are displeased. But you don't. You just lie down on your own mat and stare at the roof beams until sleep takes you. You wake to screaming. It's not close, several compounds away, but in the pre-dawn quiet sound carries. Your father is already gone. Your mother is sitting up, listening. The screaming continues for several heartbeats, then stops suddenly. Neither of you speaks. You both know what that sound means. You dress and leave for the workshop, moving through streets that are eerily empty. For this hour, people are staying inside. That's what you do when the priests are working. You don't look, you don't comment, you definitely don't interfere. The workshop is quiet today. Stone Hand is late, which has never happened before. The other workers nap their stones in silence, occasionally glancing at the doorway. Around mid-morning, he finally arrives. His face is gray. He doesn't explain his absence. He just sits down at his station and begins working on a blade that doesn't need any work. The day drags. No one talks. At midday, when you'd normally break for a small meal, Stone Hand stands and addresses the room. The great sun has decreed 3 days of fasting and purification. We work through it. The mound builders are behind schedule because of yesterday's interruption. We need to increase our tool production by half again. Someone groans softly. Stone Hand's head snaps toward the sound. Problem? Nobody answers. Good. Get back to work. You sword flint until your fingers bleed. By evening, you've processed twice your normal load. Your back aches from hunching over. Your eyes burn from focusing on stone grain in the dim light. By the third day of the fast, you're lightheaded. Children aren't technically required to fast. But when your family has barely enough food during normal times, missing 3 days of rations means everyone goes hungry. Your stomach has stopped growling. Now it just aches dully, constantly. The mound construction has accelerated dramatically. You can see the work from the workshop doorway. Hundreds of people moving in long lines, carrying baskets up the steep mound face, dumping earth, returning empty. The priests have erected a new platform on top of Monk's Mound. At dawn and dusk, they perform ceremonies visible from across the city. Smoke rises constantly from their fires. On the fourth day, rations resume. The line at the distribution center is enormous. You wait for 2 hours just to receive your family's allotment, a small sack of ground maize, some dried fish, and a handful of nuts. It's enough for maybe 3 days, if you're careful. Okay. That evening, as you're leaving the workshop, you witness something you'll remember for the rest of your life. A young woman, maybe 16 summers, is being dragged through the plaza by 2 warriors. She's screaming, fighting, kicking. Her family follows at a distance, wailing but not interfering. No one interferes. The warriors are taking her to the mound. Stone Hand grabs your shoulder and physically turns you away. "Don't look," he says quietly. "Nothing you can do, nothing anyone can do, but you did look." You saw her face. 3 months pass. The seasons are shifting toward winter. The great mound construction slows as the ground becomes harder to dig. You've grown taller but not heavier. No one gets heavier in Cahokia, unless they're born into the Sky Clan or marry into trade wealth. To one evening, you're working late, trying to finish a knife blade that keeps developing fractures, when you hear raised voices outside. Through the workshop doorway, you see a crowd gathering in the plaza. Someone speaking, their voice carrying across the open space, but you can't make out the words. Stone Hand appears beside you, listening. His face darkens. "Outsiders," he says quietly. "Talking rebellion. This won't end well." Before you can ask what he means, warriors begin moving through the crowd. The crackdown is swift and brutal. By dawn, 12 people have been arrested. You learn this from the workshop gossips, the older women who seem to know everything that happens in the city. They say the speaker in the plaza was from a satellite village, someone questioning why the outlying communities must send so much tribute to Cahokia while receiving so little in return. They say he was executed before sunrise. They say 5 others were mutilated, hands cut off, as a warning. They say the Great Sun is losing control of the outer territories. They say a lot of things and you don't know what's true anymore. Work continues. It always continues. The chunky tournaments resume. The markets operate. Traders arrive from distant cities with exotic goods. Obsidian from the Rocky Mountains, shells from the Gulf, copper from the northern lakes. Life in Cahokia has a momentum that makes it feel eternal, unchangeable, but you notice things. The tribute deliveries from surrounding villages are smaller than they used to be. The warriors stationed at the gates are more numerous. The Great Sun appears less frequently in public, and when he does, he's surrounded by 3 times as many bodyguards as before. Your father stops talking about his work. He comes home, eats, sleeps, returns to the mound. He moves like a ghost. Your mother weaves 16 hours a day without speaking. You sort stones, you learn to nap, you keep your head down and your mouth shut. This is survival in the greatest city north of Mexico. Spring arrives, and with it comes the planting season. Half the city empties as people return to their farm plots in the surrounding floodplains. Cahokia sits at the center of an enormous agricultural network. Thousands of small fields spread across the river bottoms, all producing the maize and squash and beans that keep 20,000 people alive. You're assigned to a planting crew working fields 3 miles from the city center. It's backbreaking work, breaking up earth with wooden hoes, making holes, dropping seeds, covering them. You do this from sunrise to sunset for 6 days, then walk back to the city so exhausted you barely remember the journey. But there's something almost peaceful about it. Out here, away from the mounds and the plazas and the warriors, you can breathe. The work is hard but simple. Plant seed, cover seed, move to next spot. Nobody talks about politics or tribute or executions out here. And on the 7th day, as you're working a field near the river, you see something unusual. A group of people, maybe 30, crossing the river in canoes, heading east away from Cahokia. They're loaded with possessions. They're not traders. They're not on official business. They're leaving. The crew chief sees them too. He watches in silence, then spits on the ground. "Cowards," he mutters. The great sun will remember their faces, but you wonder if maybe they're not cowards. Maybe they're smart. You return to the city to find it changed. More empty houses, more silent workshops. The population is different. Hard to quantify, but you feel it. The crowds in the plazas are thinner. The morning rush to the workshops has fewer people. Some of the outlying residential compounds are completely abandoned. Stone Hand says nothing about it, but you catch him counting the workers in the morning more carefully than before. You're down to 15 in the workshop now. Used to be 23 when you first started. The great sun decrees new construction projects, not just mounds now. A massive wooden wall around the city center, encompassing the Grand Plaza and Monk's Mound. The announcement says it's for ceremonial purposes, but everyone knows what a defensive wall looks like. You'll reassign to the wall construction for 2 months. It's worse than the mounds. The logs need to be massive, 3 times the height of a man, and they need to be planted deep in the earth. Each post requires 20 men to move it into position. The wall will eventually stretch for 2 miles, enclosing 300 acres. You spend your days in a crew hauling timber from the river to the construction site. It's a mile each way. You make the trip 8 times a day, carrying logs that weigh more than you do. By the end of the first week, your shoulders are masses of bruises. By the end of the second week, you've stopped feeling them. Nobody speaks about it. Bodies are removed quietly. Work continues. The wall rises higher. Eventually, it's done a massive wooden palisade with bastions every 50 paces and 4 main gates. It's impressive. It's also terrifying, because everyone knows you don't build something like this unless you expect to need it. The day after the wall is completed, you're sent back to the workshop. Stone Hand looks older than he did 8 months ago. Everyone does. The workshop is down to 12 workers now. 3 died while you were gone. Disease, Stone Hand says, though he doesn't meet your eyes when he says it. Your napping skills have deteriorated from 8 months of not using them. You spend the first week essentially relearning what you'd already known. Stone Hand is patient in his way, which means he only sighs heavily instead of lecturing you about waste. That evening, walking home, you take a detour past one of the abandoned residential compounds. The houses are slowly collapsing. Plant growth is already reclaiming the structures. In the center of the compound, someone has painted a symbol on the ground in red ochre, a circle with 4 lines radiating outward. You don't know what it means, but something about it makes you uneasy. The winter is worse than usual, not colder. If anything, it's strangely warm, but somehow darker, more oppressive. Food distributions are down by 1/3. The Great Sun's officials blame it on poor harvests, but you've worked the fields. The harvests were fine. The problem is that fewer villages are sending tribute. Some have stopped entirely. You hear about a punitive expedition, 200 warriors sent north to a village that refused to deliver its maize quota. The warriors return 3 weeks later. They bring maize, yes, but also slaves, men, women, children, all roped together in a long line, walking with their heads down and their spirits broken. The slaves are put to work on a new mound project on the southern edge of the city. You see them sometimes when you're running errands for Stone Hand. They're not fed enough. They're not clothed enough for winter. They die regularly. Nobody cares. Okay? One day you're sorting through a delivery of flint nodules from a quarry up north when you find something unusual, a small copper pendant wrapped in leather, hidden inside a hollow nodule. Someone had deliberately concealed it. You pull it out and examine it. The pendant shows a thunderbird design, beautifully worked. Stonen appears behind you. You expect him to confiscate it, but instead he looks at it for a long moment, then says quietly, "Put it back. Forget you saw it, you do, but you understand what it means." Even the quarry workers are hoarding valuables now, hiding them from tribute collectors. The system is breaking down. Spring doesn't bring relief this year. It brings chaos. 3 of the northern satellite cities openly rebel, cutting off all tribute and trade. The Great Sun's response is immediate. 1,000 warriors, mobilized. You watch them leave through the northern gate. A river of men with weapons and painted faces, drums beating a marching rhythm. They return 6 weeks later. Only 800 of them. The ones who come back tell stories of ambush, of prepared defenses, of villages that had built their own walls and trained their own warriors. The easy conquests are over. Now there's real war. The city's population continues to shrink. It's not just outlying villages now. Even people born in Cahokia are leaving. Whole families vanishing overnight. The Great Sun's men try to stop it, posting guards on the major roads. But you can't guard everything. The Mississippi River alone offers countless escape routes. Your father dies during the planting season. Not from violence or sacrifice, just exhaustion. His heart stops beating one evening after his meal. He's dead before he hits the ground. Your mother barely reacts. You help her drag his body to the death house, where the priests perform brief rites before cremation. No elaborate burial, no mound interment, just ashes scattered in the river. 2 days later, you're back at work. Stone Hand doesn't mention it. Nobody mentions anything anymore. You've all seen too much death for it to register as unusual. By summer, the workshop is down to 7 workers. Stone Hand doesn't replace anyone who leaves or dies anymore. There's no point. There aren't enough raw materials coming in. The trade networks that supplied Cahokia with flint, obsidian, and copper are breaking down. Traders aren't willing to risk the journey through increasingly hostile territories. You're given more responsibility despite your age. Stone Hand is teaching you the premium techniques now, how to work obsidian, how to create pressure-flaked ceremonial blades that would have only been trusted to masters a few years ago. It's not because you're particularly talented, it's because there's no one else. You see the Great Sun himself one day, up close. He's inspecting the workshops, surrounded by warriors and priests. He's younger than you expected, maybe 25, and he looks terrified behind the ceremonial paint and copper ornaments. His eyes dart constantly. His hands shake. This is supposed to be a divine being descended from the sun itself. He looks like a man who knows he's drowning. That night, you find your mother packing the few possessions you own into a leather bag. "Okay, we're leaving," she says. Not a discussion. A statement. You leave on a moonless night. Just you and your mother, carrying everything you own in 2 leather bags. You slip out of the house and move through the residential compounds, staying in shadows, avoiding the main paths. The guards at the gates are supposed to stop people from leaving, but they're young, poorly trained replacements for the experienced warriors who died in the northern campaigns. You wait until they're focused on something else, then slip through a drainage gap in the wall. Outside the palisade, Cahokia looks different. The mounds still dominate the landscape, but from out here they seem less impressive, more like what they are: piles of dirt that thousands of people died, building for no reason you can identify. You walk east, away from the river. Your mother leads. She's planned this, clearly thought it through. She knows which villages might take you in, which paths to take. You don't ask how she knows these things. You just follow. By dawn, you're 6 miles from Cahokia, resting in a small grove of trees. You can still see Monk's Mound in the distance, a brown triangle against the lightening sky. You feel nothing looking at it. No nostalgia, no regret, just the dull relief of having survived another day. Your mother is already asleep, exhausted from the night's walk. You should sleep too. But you sit and watch the sunrise, thinking about your father, about Stonehand, about the girl who was dragged to the mound years ago, about all the people who didn't leave. Eventually, you sleep. You spend 2 weeks walking east, then north, staying away from major trade routes. Your mother knows people, relatives, distant connections, people who owe her family favors from before Cahokia consumed everything. You stay 3 days in one village, 5 days in another. Nobody asks too many questions. Refugees from Cahokia are common now. Eventually, you reach a small settlement called Willow Creek, about 40 miles north of Cahokia. It's not even a real town, maybe 200 people living in scattered family compounds along a small river. They grow maize and squash, hunt deer, fish the creek. It's everything Cahokia stopped being 50 years ago. Simple, sustainable, survivable. The headman is a distant cousin of your mother's. He lets you stay, assigns you to work crews. You're not a slave here, just a new member of the community expected to contribute. It's work, planting, hunting, building, but nobody's forcing you to haul baskets of earth up an artificial mountain for the glory of a divine ruler who's probably dead by now. You learn that Willow Creek deliberately stayed small. When Cahokia's demands for tribute grew heavier, they sent just enough to avoid conquest, but never enough to make themselves wealthy. They played weak and poor and insignificant, and it saved them. 2 years pass quietly. You're 20 now, no longer the frightened boy who fled Cahokia. You've become a skilled hunter, learning from the village's experienced men. Your stoneworking skills are valuable here. You make projectile points, knives, and scrapers for the community. In return, you have enough to eat, a small house you built yourself, and something you never had in Cahokia: peace. Your mother died quietly last winter. She went to sleep one night and didn't wake up. The village buried her properly, with ceremony and respect. You carved a marker stone using the technique Stonehand taught you years ago. You think about him sometimes, wondering if he's still alive, still sorting stones in a half-empty workshop in a dying city. A woman named Morning Dove has started leaving you gifts: fresh fish, woven baskets, decorated pottery. It takes you embarrassingly long to understand what this means. You're not good at social interactions that don't involve fear and survival. But eventually you leave gifts back, and soon you're sharing a house. Life in Willow Creek has a rhythm that Cahokia never did. You work hard, but the work has purpose you can see and touch. You plant seeds, they become food. You hunt deer, you eat meat, you make tools, people use them. There are no mounds, no tribute, no priests demanding sacrifice, no great sun claiming divine authority. One evening, sitting by the creek watching the sunset, Morning Dove asks you about Cahokia. You haven't talked about it in years. I survived it, you finally say. That's all. There's nothing else worth saying. They described fights over diminishing food supplies. They described the last chunky tournament, attended by maybe 50 people when it used to draw thousands. They described priests conducting elaborate ceremonies in front of nearly empty plazas, pretending the city hasn't collapsed around them. One of the refugees is a young man about your age named Swift Runner. He's from the workshop district. After he's recovered somewhat, he seeks you out. "Did you know Stone Hand?" he asks. Your throat tightens. "Yes, he died 2 winters ago, pneumonia. He just kept working until he couldn't anymore, then he died." Swift Runner pauses. "He talked about you sometimes, said you had talent, said he wondered if you made it out." You nod slowly, unable to speak. Swift Runner integrates slowly. "He's too damaged to work as hard as others yet, but he does what he can. In the evenings, the two of you sometimes sit together, not talking much. There's an understanding between workshop boys who survived. Over the following year, more refugees trickle in from various directions. Cahokia is hemorrhaging population. Some estimates say the city is down to 2,000 people now. The massive earthen pyramids still stand, but they're monuments to nothing now, just dirt piles that swallowed 20 years of collective labor and thousands of lives. Traders who still occasionally visit Cahokia bring increasingly strange reports. The remaining population is superstitious, paranoid. They've developed elaborate theories about why the gods abandoned them. Everything from angering the earth spirits to failing to conduct enough sacrifices to cosmic cycles beyond human control. Nobody wants to accept the simpler explanation. The system was unsustainable. You cannot maintain a city of 20,000 people through coerced tribute from increasingly distant villages. Eventually, the villages say no. Mourning Dove is pregnant. This news surprises you more than it should. You've been sharing a house for 2 years. But the idea of bringing new life into the world feels foreign to someone who spent their formative years watching people die. "Will you teach them about Cahokia?" she asks one evening, hand on her growing belly. "You think about this carefully." "Yes," you finally say. "So they never try to build it again." Your daughter is born in early spring. You name her Small Bird, hoping she'll have a lighter life than Black Heron did. Mourning Dove handles motherhood with the same practical competence she brings to everything. You're less certain about fatherhood, but you try. Jake. When Small Bird is 3 months old, a trader arrives with the most significant news in years. Cahokia is essentially abandoned. The population has dropped below 1,000, maybe lower. The remaining people are mostly elderly, and those too poor or sick to travel. The Great Sun's lineage has ended. The last ruler simply vanished one night, probably fleeing to avoid assassination. There's no government anymore, no structure, just scattered people living in the ruins of something that was never sustainable. The massive mounds still stand. They'll probably stand for hundreds of years, maybe thousands, but they're empty now. No ceremonies, no drums, no endless lines of workers hauling earth baskets. Just monuments to hubris, slowly eroding under rain and wind. You feel something like vindication, but also sadness. 1,000 people at its height, maybe 50,000 more in surrounding villages and farmsteads, all organized around feeding the center. All that effort, all that suffering, all those deaths. And for what? For dirt piles and the ego of rulers who claimed to be descended from the sun. The trader also brings less dramatic but more useful news. He's looking for skilled craftsmen. He saw your work and wants to commission 20 projectile points and 10 knives. He'll pay in copper, shell beads, and exotic flint from the northern territories. You negotiate and settle on terms. 5 years pass. Small Bird learns to walk, to talk, to help Mourning Dove with simple tasks. You teach her to recognize different types of stone, how to test a blade for sharpness, how to track deer through the forest. She's curious about everything, always asking why, until Mourning Dove laughingly tells her to let you work. Swift Runner eventually marries a widow in the village who lost her husband to a hunting accident. They seem content together. He's still thin, still carries shadows in his eyes, but he laughs sometimes now. That's something. Your trade work has expanded. Traders regularly stop at Willow Creek now, knowing they can commission quality tools. You've trained 2 apprentices from the village, teaching them the skills Stone Hand taught you. The cycle continues, but differently. These boys aren't forced into workshops under threat of starvation. They choose to learn because the skill is useful. One evening, Smallbird asks the question you've been expecting. Papa, why do those big hills exist? She's pointing west, where on clear days you can just barely see Monk's Mound on the horizon. You sit down with her. Mourning Dove joins you. You tell her about Cahokia. You keep it simple. She's only 5, but you don't lie. You tell her about a city that grew too big, that demanded too much, that forgot how to take care of its people. You tell her about mounds built with forced labor, about tribute extracted at spear point, about rulers who claimed divine authority while their people starved. That sounds bad, she says seriously. Why did people stay? You smile sadly, because leaving was dangerous, and because most people thought it would get better. Swift Runner has 3 children now. His oldest, a boy of 8, shows interest in stoneworking. You've begun teaching him, along with 4 other apprentices. Your workshop, a simple structure behind your house, has become Willow Creek's manufacturing center for stone tools. Traders come from 100 miles away. One day, a different kind of visitor arrives. An old man, maybe 70, walking with 2 younger people supporting him. He's dressed in rags, but you can see the ghost of elaborate tattoos on his arms. Craftsman marks, master level. Your heart stops before you even see his face clearly. It's not Stone Hand, but the tattoos are from Cahokia's workshop district, and this man is old enough to have been there when you were. His name is 3 Crows. He was a master napper in the ceramic and stone workshop, 2 buildings over from where you train. He's heard about your work, traveled specifically to meet the workshop boy who made it out and made something of himself. You talk for hours. He tells you about the final years, the gradual emptying, the decay, the strange quiet that settles over a dying city. He was one of the last 50 people to leave Cahokia, finally abandoning it 5 years ago, when maintaining even basic survival became impossible. 3 Crows stays in Willow Creek. At his age, he's not traveling anywhere else. The village gives him a small house near yours. He can't work anymore. His hands shake too badly, but he can teach, and he does. Your apprentices learn techniques you never mastered, because 3 Crows was better than Stone Hand ever was. Yeah, he tells you something one evening that stays with you. We all knew it was ending, he says quietly. For the last 15 years, everyone in the city knew, but nobody said it out loud. We just kept going through the motions, building mounds, conducting ceremonies, collecting tribute, like if we pretended hard enough, it wouldn't be real. Why didn't people leave sooner? You ask. Same reason you almost didn't, he replies. Fear and hope. Fear that leaving would be worse, and hope that maybe, somehow, things would get better. He pauses. By the time hope died, most people were too weak to leave. And the last permanent residents, he tells you, left about 10 years ago. Since then, Cahokia has been completely abandoned, except for occasional travelers using the mounds as landmarks. The wooden palisade has collapsed. The great plazas are overgrown. Small trees are growing on Monk's Mound itself. Yakang. Will anyone remember it? You ask. In 100 years, 200? Three Crows shrugs. The mounds will still be there. People will see them and wonder. Maybe they'll make up stories about giants or spirits or gods. Maybe they'll figure out the truth, that ordinary people built extraordinary things for terrible reason. He looks at you directly. That's why you tell your daughter. So someone remembers what really happened. Three Crows dies in his sleep 2 years later. He's 72, which is phenomenally old. The village buries him with honor, placing stone tools he made decades ago in Cahokia beside his body. You carve his memorial stone yourself, including the workshop tattoo symbols, making sure anyone who sees it will know he was a master. Small Bird marries a young hunter from a neighboring village. They build a house near yours. Within a year, she's pregnant. You're going to be a grandfather at 39, which Mourning Dove finds hilarious for reasons you don't entirely understand. Your grandson is born in spring. Small Bird names him Stonehand, after the teacher you told her stories about. You cry when she tells you this, which surprises everyone, including yourself. You haven't cried since your mother died, maybe before that. But somehow this breaks through. The boy is healthy and loud and demands constant attention. You make him a small wooden toy in the shape of a bird. He immediately puts it in his mouth, which apparently is what babies do with everything. One afternoon, you're teaching in the workshop when one of your apprentices asks about Cahokia. He's heard rumors, stories, but wants to know the truth. You realize that to him, Cahokia is ancient history. It fell before he was born. The city that dominated your childhood exists now only in stories. You tell him. You tell all of them. The whole truth, no softening it. They need to know what happens when power becomes more important than people, when symbols matter more than sustainability, when authority demands worship rather than earning respect. You're 45 when Mourning Dove gets sick. It starts as a cough, becomes weakness, then fever. The village healer tries everything. Herbs, steam treatments, prayers. Nothing works. She dies on a cool autumn evening, holding your hand, looking peaceful. You've lived through so much death that you thought you were numb to it. You're not. This is different. This is someone who chose you, who built a life with you, who made everything survivable. You're lost without her. A small bird moves back into your house for a few months, bringing little stone hand with her. She doesn't ask, just does it, understanding you need people around. The boy is 3 now, talking constantly, asking endless questions. He's your anchor. When the grief threatens to drown you, his small hand tugging on yours pulls you back to the surface. Swift Runner visits often. He doesn't say much. What is there to say? But his presence helps. You sit together like you did when you were younger. 2 workshop boys who survived, now middle-aged men dealing with loss. Winter is hard. You work less, sleep more, sit by the fire staring at nothing. But spring comes eventually. It always does. Small Bird moves back to her own house. You resume teaching. The workshop continues. Life continues because that's what life does. One morning, young Stonehand appears at the workshop door. Mama says I'm old enough to learn stones now, he announces seriously. He's 4. He's definitely not old enough. But you smile anyway and give him a smooth river pebble to examine, and he sits beside you for an hour, studying it with fierce concentration. You're 50 when the fever comes through Willow Creek. It's the kind of sickness that spreads fast. One person has it, then 5, then 20. The healer is overwhelmed. People die, including 2 of your apprentices. Young Stonehand gets sick but survives, though it's close. You don't get sick at all, which seems unfair somehow. You'd trade places with any of them. The fever eventually passes. The village recovers, but it's smaller now. These things happen. Disease is part of life, especially in communities where people live close together. It's still nothing compared to Cahokia's worst years, when disease combined with malnutrition killed hundreds during hard winters. A small bird's second child is a daughter. They name her Mourning Dove after her grandmother. You cry again, becoming apparently the kind of old man who cries at everything. Small bird just hugs you and tells you it's fine. Young Stonehand is 8 now and actually learning real craft skills. He has talent, better than you did at his age, though you'd never tell him that. Too much praise makes children lazy. This is something Stonehand the original told you once, and you found it to be true. Swift Runner's oldest son is 15 and fully trained now, making tools as good as yours. You've essentially created a craftsman lineage without meaning to. Willow Creek has become known for its quality stone tools, which brings steady trade, which brings prosperity. Not Cahokia-level civilization. Nobody wants that, but comfortable subsistence with some luxuries. One evening, Swift Runner asks you something. Do you ever regret it leaving? You think about this carefully. I regret what I lost there. But I don't regret leaving. You're 55 when traders bring news that shakes everyone who remembers the old days. Someone's trying to rebuild Cahokia. A chief from a western territory has moved his people to the abandoned site, claiming divine mandate to restore the city's glory. A Swift Runner's face goes pale when he hears this. You just feel tired. The mounds are still there, after all. Of course, someone would eventually try to use them again. Symbols of power are hard to resist, even when they're built on bones and misery. The project lasts 3 years. You hear updates occasionally. The new chief cleared some plazas, repaired some structures, demanded tribute from nearby villages. A few hundred people moved in, drawn by promises of renewed greatness. Then, it collapses. The surrounding villages refuse to pay tribute. The chief can't maintain control. His people drift away. Within 3 years, Cahokia is abandoned again, this time probably permanently. You can't rebuild on a foundation of trauma. The land itself remembers. Young Stonehand is 13 now, fully competent at basic toolmaking. He's also teaching a few younger children, which means you've created a 3-generation teaching lineage. This pleases you more than it probably should. Small Bird has 4 children now. Your house is constantly invaded by grandchildren, demanding stories, attention, food. You pretend to be annoyed, but everyone knows you're not. These children are your legacy more than any stone tool you've ever made. One day, young Stonehand asks if you'll take him to see Cahokia. He's heard stories his whole life. He wants to see the mounds. You're 56 when you make the journey back to Cahokia. It takes 3 days of walking, which is hard on your old body. Young Stonehand helps you when the path gets difficult. Small Bird insisted you bring 2 of Swift Runner's sons as well. Nobody travels unsafe territories with just an old man and a boy. Okay, you see the mounds from 5 miles away. They're smaller than you remember, which surprises you until you realize it's not the mounds that shrunk, it's your fear of them. They're just earthen structures. Large ones, yes, but not the mountains of your childhood nightmares. Okay, the city is completely outgrown. Trees grow in what used to be the Grand Plaza. The wooden palisade is gone, collapsed or harvested for timber decades ago. Houses are collapsed mounds of wattle and daub. The workshops are unrecognizable. Only the earthen mounds remain, and even they're eroding, slowly returning to the landscape. Okay. You walk up Monk's Mound. It's harder than you remember. The slope is steep and you're old. But you make it, young Stonehand supporting your elbow. From the top, you can see for miles. The Mississippi River curves through the floodplain. Small villages dot the landscape. Life continues, just not in the concentrated, unsustainable form it took here. This is where they made you carry baskets? Stonehand asks. Yes, why? You pause. looking at the empty plaza below. Because the people in power convinced everyone else that this mattered more than food, more than family, more than survival itself, you stay 2 days, camping in what used to be the workshop district. There's nothing left of the actual workshops, but you find the spot by its relationship to Monk's Mound. You stand where Stonehand Station would have been and feel nothing. The ghosts here died long ago. Young Stonehand explores with teenage energy, finding artifacts, a broken pottery shard, a corroded copper ornament, stone tool fragments. You explain what each thing was, how it was made, who might have used it. He's fascinated by the history, but, importantly, not impressed by the scale. To him, this is just a cautionary tale, not a model to aspire to, right? On the second evening, you find the residential compound where you grew up. It's completely gone, just depressions in the ground where post holes rotted away. You stand where your family's house would have been. You think about your father dying from exhaustion at 35, your mother weaving until her hands bled, yourself, a frightened boy sorting stones in a dark workshop. "Are you okay, grandfather?" Stonehand asks. "Yes," you say, and surprisingly, you are. This place has no power over you anymore. It's just dirt and ruins and slowly growing trees. The next morning, you start the journey home. You don't look back. You've seen what you needed it to see, remembered what needed remembering. Young Stonehand will tell his children about this place, and they'll tell theirs, and eventually it will just be a story. That's enough. Back in Willow Creek, life continues its comfortable rhythm. You're 58 now, teaching less but still overseeing the workshop. Young Stonehand has effectively taken over daily operations, which relieves you more than you expected. Being old is exhausting in ways you didn't anticipate. Swift Runner dies that winter. Pneumonia like Stonehand all those years ago. You sit with him as he goes. His last words are about his children, hoping they'll remember to check the fish traps daily. Practical to the end. You speak at his burial, talking about the workshop boy who survived, who built a life, who raised good children. The village mourns him properly. You're the last one now. The last person in Willow Creek who actually lived in Cahokia during its height. Everyone else either wasn't born yet or left as children, too young to remember clearly. You've become a living archive, the keeper of uncomfortable history. The grandchildren ask for stories constantly. You tell them, over and over, varying the details to keep them interested, but never changing the core truth. Cahokia failed because it prioritized monuments over people, because it demanded everything and gave back only the illusion of glory. A small bird sometimes worries you're too focused on the past. She's probably right. But someone has to remember. Someone has to say we tried this before, and it ended in collapse and suffering. Otherwise, people might try again. Young Stonehand announces he's taking a wife, a girl from a neighboring village, a weaver's daughter. You meet her and approve, though your approval isn't really needed. They're going to build a house near yours. The pattern continues. Family, craft, community. You're 60 when your body finally starts failing in earnest. The walking becomes harder. The breathing becomes labored. Your hands shake too badly to work stone anymore, which frustrates you more than the other indignities. A craftsman who can't craft feels purposeless. But young Stonehand, now just call it Stonehand by everyone, the name fully his, brings you pieces to examine and critique. You can still see quality, still catch flaws, still teach through words, if not demonstration. It's something. Small bird brings you meals, makes sure you're comfortable, doesn't say what you both know, you're dying. Not dramatically, not from disease or injury, just from being old. Your body has done 60 years of hard labor, and it's done now. You spend a lot of time thinking about numbers. 20,000 people in Cahokia at its height, maybe 50,000 more in tributary villages. All that human energy, all that suffering, all those lives spent building monuments that outlasted the civilization by only a few decades before being abandoned to trees and weather. Willow Creek never exceeded 300 people, yet it's thrived for 60 years, stable and sustainable. Nobody here goes hungry. Nobody is forced to work until their bodies break. Nobody worships rulers who claim divine descent. It's not grand, but it's survivable, and that matters more than grandeur ever could. One afternoon, you ask Stonehand to bring you to the workshop one last time. He helps you walk there, your grandson, carrying you more than supporting you. You sit on a mat and watch him work for hours, watch the apprentices, watch the teaching continue. The cycle you entered as a terrified child continues without you. This is good. This is how it should be. You die on a quiet morning in early autumn. Small Bird is with you. Stonehand is with you. Most of the grandchildren are there. You're not in pain. Your body just stops working, like a fire burning down to embers and then going out. Your last words are practical, like swift runners. Keep the apprentices working. Don't let them get lazy. Stonehand promises through tears. Then you close your eyes and let go. The village buries you with honor. They place stone tools beside you. Some you made, some made by Stonehand the elder, some made by your grandson. 3 generations of craft, continuing beyond any individual life. They carve a memorial stone, and on it they mark not just your name but your story. Workshop boy from Cahokia, survivor, teacher, father-grandfather. Stonehand continues the workshop. He takes more apprentices, teaches them not just craft, but history. He tells them about the grandfather who survived Cahokia, who saw a great city collapse, who understood that sustainability matters more than scale. The mounds still stand 60 miles away. They'll stand for hundreds more years, maybe thousands. Future peoples will see them and wonder what civilization built such monuments. Some will create elaborate theories about ancient giants, or lost advanced cultures, or divine intervention. But in Willow Creek and villages like it, the truth survives in oral tradition. The stories pass from grandfather to grandson, from teacher to apprentice, from survivor to inheritor. They tell about a city that grew too large, demanded too much, valued power over people. They tell about the collapse, the suffering, the lessons learned. They tell these stories so those mistakes won't be repeated. Whether future generations listen is another question entirely. But the stones remember, the earth remembers. And as long as someone tells the truth, Cahokia's real legacy isn't the empty mounds. It's the knowledge of why they're empty. And so Black Heron's story ends, but the lessons survive. The mounds of Cahokia still stand today. You can visit them outside modern St. Louis. Archaeologists continue uncovering the truth. A massive, complex civilization that rose, dominated the Mississippi Valley, and collapsed before Europeans ever arrived. The reasons? Likely multiple: environmental stress, political instability, unsustainable tribute demands, possibly climate shifts. But the core truth remains: even great cities fall when they forget that human welfare matters more than monuments. So rest easy tonight, knowing that history teaches, even when it whispers from ruins. What forgotten history should we explore next? Let me know in the comments. Sleep well,